secret yedin. Money doesn't chase noise. On a quiet street in Brooklyn, New York, stood a small tailor shop squeezed between a deli and a discount electronics store. The sign above the door was faded, hand-painted decades ago by the owner's father. No neon lights, no flashy posters, no catchy slogans, just 2 words in gold paint: Rosen Tailor. Inside, the shop smelled of wool, chalk, and old wood. The shelves were lined with bolts of fabric stacked neatly, some untouched for years. Mr. Rosen, a man in his late 60s with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, worked alone most days. His hands were steady, his voice soft. If you searched online for tailors near me, you would never find Rosen Tailor. He had no website, no Instagram feed, no TikTok videos showing before and after suit transformations. He didn't advertise in the subway, didn't hand out business cards, didn't even have an email address. To most of New York, his shop didn't exist. Yet, in the neighborhood, he was a quiet legend. Judges, lawyers, Wall Street traders, rabbis all came to him when they needed something tailored perfectly. His clients didn't discover him through ads. They were sent by whispers, "If you want it done right, go to Rosen." For decades, Mr. Rosen stitched, hemmed, and pressed, charging fair prices and delivering on time. He didn't offer discounts. He didn't beg for reviews. He simply showed up every day, unlocked the same heavy door, and worked in silence. 15 years passed like that. Then, almost unnoticed, something remarkable happened. One day, the building owner decided to sell. Before anyone else could make an offer, Rosen quietly signed the papers. Months later, when another property nearby went on the market, he bought that too. By the time he turned 70, Rosen wasn't just a tailor, he was a landlord. People who had walked past his tiny shop for years were shocked. How could this man, with no advertising, no fame, no online presence, buy half the block? The answer was simple but profound. Rosen never chased noise. While other shops spent thousands on ads, trying to go viral, Rosen invested in something less glamorous but far more durable: trust. Every stitch he sewed was a promise kept. Every client who walked out satisfied became another silent advertisement. Word of mouth moved slower than algorithms, but it lasted longer. Rosen once told his son, "Money doesn't run toward the loudest drum, it runs toward the quietest confidence." He wasn't interested in likes or followers. He was interested in repeat customers, steady cash flow, and building quietly until the day came when opportunities knocked. And when they did, he had the capital and the reputation to act. The lesson. Jewish tradition has long taught that value doesn't need to shout. True wealth is not measured in how loudly you declare your success, but in how consistently you deliver value when no one is watching. Rosen's story is more than a tale of one tailor. It is a reminder that, silence is a shield. It protects you from envy and competition. Consistency compounds. Small, repeated acts of reliability build more wealth than one viral moment. Reputation outlives noise. Marketing fades. Whispers last for generations. In the end, the quiet man in the faded shop didn't just tailor suits. He tailored his own financial destiny stitch by stitch, silent but unstoppable. Secret 2. Debt as a tool of power, not a chain. On the south side of Chicago, there was a small pharmacy tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The sign above the door read, "Kaplan's Pharmacy." No chain store logos, no sleek branding, just a family business that had been there for nearly 40 years. Mrs. Kaplan, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a warm smile, ran the counter herself. She knew every customer by name. She also knew their families, their illnesses, and their struggles. More than once, when a long-time customer couldn't afford a prescription, she would quietly slide the medicine across the counter and say, "Pay me when you can." Behind her register sat a thick, leather-bound notebook. Its pages were filled not with financial spreadsheets, but with handwritten notes, names, dates, amounts owed. Some debts stretched months. Strangers who saw it might have called her foolish. After all, in business school they teach you, never let accounts receivable sit too long. But Mrs. Kaplan wasn't running her store by textbooks. She was running it by something older wisdom, passed down through generations of Jewish merchants. Debt, when handled with care, is not weakness. It is power. Doctors from nearby clinics often came in at the end of the month, short on cash flow. Kaplan let them take supplies, gloves, thermometers, syringes on credit. They always came back. Why? Because their survival depended on her trust. Her generosity made her indispensable. They could get a cheaper deal at a big box supplier, but no corporate chain would ever say, "Take it now, pay later." One evening, her son, a recent MBA graduate, challenged her. "Mom, why do you let people owe you money? Don't you see the risk? What if they don't pay?" She smiled, tapping her worn notebook. "Son, you see debt as a chain. I see it as a leash. When people owe me, they don't run away. They return. Again and again. They don't just owe me dollars. They owe me trust." That was her secret. Kaplan's pharmacy was never the cheapest, never the flashiest. But it was steady. Because she didn't just sell medicine, she sold credit. And with credit came loyalty. The lesson. Most people fear debt. They see borrowing as shackles and lending as weakness. But in the Jewish money-making mindset, debt is a tool. Asterisk. To control, not to gamble. Debt should never be taken blindly. It should always be structured, with a clear path to repayment. Asterisk. To bond, not to break. Lending to the right people ties them to you. It makes them return, not just as customers, but as partners. Asterisk. To build credibility. Those who repay strengthen their relationship with you. Those who don't reveal themselves quickly. Mrs. Kaplan knew something most business schools forget. Wealth is not built by squeezing customers at the counter. It is built by holding their loyalty over decades. And sometimes, the best way to earn loyalty is to trust first. So, while others chained themselves to the fear of debt, Kaplan turned it into quiet leverage. Her notebook of debts was, in truth, a book of unshakable relationships. And when her competitors closed one by one, Kaplan's pharmacy endured, powered by the invisible threads of trust woven through every page. Secret 3. Guard the back door. Giữ chặt cửa sau. In Queens, New York, there was a bustling deli on the corner of a busy street. Every lunch hour, the line spilled out the door, construction workers ordering pastrami sandwiches, office staff grabbing bagels, kids buying soda. To anyone passing by, it looked like the owner, Mr. Friedman, was rolling in cash. But behind the counter, Friedman knew something was wrong. His sales were strong, yet his bank account was shrinking. Every month, despite crowds and receipts piling up, the profit seemed thinner and thinner. One evening, frustrated, he stayed late after closing. The city outside had quieted, and the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. He sat with a calculator, receipts, and invoices spread across the table. And that's when he saw it. Tiny leaks everywhere. Asterisk employees tossing out perfectly good bread at the end of the day instead of storing it. Asterisk subscription services for online tools nobody used anymore, quietly draining $200 a month. Asterisk a careless supplier overcharging him by a few cents per pound, which added up to thousands over the year. Asterisk free drinks on the house, given away by staff to friends, unnoticed during rush hours. None of it looked catastrophic, but together they were bleeding him dry. The next morning, Friedman made changes. He set stricter policies for leftovers. Unsold bread was donated, not wasted. He canceled unused subscriptions. He started checking supplier invoices line by line, and he reminded his employees, "Every soda you give away isn't free, it's my rent." Within 6 months, the difference was astonishing. Without gaining a single new customer, his profits doubled. The lesson. In Jewish business tradition, there is an old saying, "It's not what enters the front door that makes you rich, it's what escapes out the back door that makes you poor." Too often, entrepreneurs obsess over growth, new customers, bigger sales, louder marketing. They imagine wealth comes from adding more at the front. But the quiet truth is, most businesses collapse not from lack of income, but from uncontrolled leaks. Guarding the back door means asterisk, watching for silent costs, subscriptions, waste, inefficiency. Asterisk training staff to treat every item as valuable, not disposable. Asterisk checking invoices and contracts carefully, because small overcharges compound. Asterisk valuing frugality not as stinginess, but as discipline. The back door is invisible to outsiders. Customers see the crowds, competitors see the sales, but only the wise owner asks, "Where is the money leaking out?" Mr. Friedman didn't save his deli by shouting louder or by chasing trends on social media. He saved it by tightening the leaks. In every Jewish neighborhood, stories like this are told quietly, almost like warnings. Don't get blinded by the front, guard the back. Because wealth built without discipline is like a bucket full of holes. No matter how much water you pour in, it will never stay full. Secret 4. Capital must flow, not sleep. On Fairfax Avenue in Los Angeles, two small shops stood across from each other. One was run by Jacob, a young entrepreneur with big dreams. He imported rare wines from Europe, vintage bottles he believed would make him rich. The other shop belonged to Mr. Levy, an older man in his 70s, who sold nothing more glamorous than bagels, cream cheese, and coffee. Jacob's store looked like a gallery. Bottles were displayed under soft lighting, each tagged with exotic labels and high prices. He bragged that some bottles could sell for $400 profit if the right buyer came along. But weeks passed, and many bottles collected dust. Jacob reassured himself, "When they sell, I'll hit it big." Meanwhile, across the street, Levy's bagel shop smelled of fresh bread every morning. His customers weren't collectors or connoisseurs. They were delivery drivers grabbing breakfast, students rushing to class, office workers needing coffee. His profits per sale were tiny 50 cents here, $1 there. But his money never sat still. Every dollar he invested in flour and cream cheese turned back into cash within days. He reinvested the cash, bought more supplies, and sold again. The cycle repeated endlessly. At year's end, Jacob had a store filled with expensive wine that still hadn't sold. Levy, on the other hand, had turned his modest bagel business into enough profit to buy a second bakery. The lesson. Jewish traders whisper this lesson often. Money is like blood. It must circulate, or it dies. Most people chase big margins. They believe wealth comes from rare deals, expensive products, and high markups. But the Jewish mindset looks at something different. Speed of turnover. A smaller profit, multiplied many times, beats a giant profit that never comes. Capital that sleeps, whether in unsold goods, idle savings, or stagnant investments, becomes a liability. Inflation eats it. Dust collects on it. Worse, it blinds the owner with false hope. The Jewish approach is practical. Asterisk. Better to earn $10 10 times than $100 once a year. Asterisk. Better to sell quickly and reinvest than to sit on treasures that don't move. Asterisk. Better to value cash flow over prestige. Jacob wanted prestige. Levy wanted stability. One dreamed of a single big win, the other built steady, repeated wins. And in the end, Levy thrived while Jacob struggled. Why it matters. For generations, Jewish families have taught their children to avoid falling in love with products or assets that don't move. Don't cling to unsold inventory. Don't hold money hostage to pride. Don't assume tomorrow's price will rescue today's stagnation. Instead, keep capital flowing. Even if the profit looks small, the rhythm of circulation builds strength. Like a heart pumping blood, the faster and healthier the circulation, the longer the body survives. Mr. Levy never owned a bottle worth $400, but he owned peace of mind, loyal customers, and eventually 2 bakeries. Jacob had a shop full of expensive wine, but also a full plate of debt. The difference? One let money sleep, the other kept it alive. Secret 5. Read people, not just numbers. In Miami's bustling seafood market, amidst the chaos of shouting vendors and the salty smell of fresh catch, there was a stall that never seemed to have flashy banners or 50% off signs. It belonged to Mr. Levine, a quiet man in his late 60s. His stall looked ordinary, just a table stacked with fish on ice. Yet every morning, customers lined up at his counter first, while other vendors struggled to sell. What was his secret? He didn't stare at spreadsheets. He stared at people. Levine kept a small notebook, but not for prices or profit margins. In it, he scribbled observations, asterisk, families buy more on Fridays preparing for Sabbath dinner, asterisk. When the weather drops, customers crave soups, stock chicken, not shrimp, asterisk. Young mothers often ask for easy-to-cook fish. Tilapia sells better than grouper. He noticed details others ignored. The jackets people wore, the speed of their steps, whether they carried reusable bags or credit cards. These clues told him more about demand than any chart ever could. One winter morning, Miami had an unusual cold snap. While other vendors stacked their tables with shrimp and lobster, Levine quietly brought in ingredients for chicken, soup, carrots, celery, whole chickens from a nearby farmer. By noon, he had sold out. The others stared in disbelief. How did he know? Levine shrugged. I just watched what people were wearing. The lesson. Jewish merchants have long said, the numbers tell you what has happened. People tell you what will happen. Spreadsheets and reports are useful, but they are always backward-looking. They describe yesterday. Real opportunity lies in reading the present moment, in observing behavior, mood, and subtle signals that predict tomorrow. The Jewish silent wealth mindset prioritizes asterisk observation over assumption. Don't assume what people want, watch what they do. Asterisk details over data. A nervous glance, a repeated question, or a shift in clothing can signal changing demand. Asterisk psychology over price tags. Customers don't just buy products. They buy feelings, comfort, trust, convenience. Why it matters. In a world obsessed with algorithms and analytics, the quiet observer often sees what machines cannot. Technology may tell you how many customers bought chicken last month, but it cannot tell you the story of a mother shivering in a coat, thinking of soup for her children. The Jewish approach is not anti-technology, it is simply a reminder that human signals come first. Markets are made of people, and people are predictable when you learn to truly watch them. Mr. Levine's stall never had discounts or neon signs, yet he thrived for decades because he mastered the art of looking closer. Numbers told him the past, people told him the future, and in the silent game of wealth, those who see the future even in the smallest gestures always win. Secret 6. Growth by model, not emotion. In Houston, Texas, a young man named David had built an online sneaker store out of his garage. For months, he hustled photographing shoes, posting them on TikTok, answering customer messages late into the night. Then, one video went viral. Orders poured in 10, 20, 70 pairs a day. His phone buzzed non-stop with notifications. High on adrenaline, David made quick decisions. He leased a warehouse. He hired 5 employees. He signed a loan for new inventory. His friends praised him. You're killing it, man. Scale or die, right? But within 6 months, the cracks showed. His supply chain lagged. Customers complained about late shipments. Employees quit because of chaotic schedules. Rent payments loomed. The very wave that lifted him was now drowning him. Across town, his cousin Sarah was running a small jewelry business. She too had moments of sudden demand, but she didn't chase them with reckless expansion. Instead, she asked herself 3 questions before growing. 1. Can my current system repeat itself without me? 2. Do I have enough cash to survive 3 bad months? 3. Can I deliver the same quality if I double my customers? Only when the answer was yes did she expand. Slowly, carefully, one piece at a time. A year later, David had shut down his warehouse, drowning in debt. Sarah had opened her second shop, modest, but stable. The lesson. Jewish families often remind their children, growth is not a trophy, it is a test. The marketplace often glorifies speed, move fast and break things, go big or go home. But those slogans are dangerous. Growth without a model is like adding more floors to a house with a cracked foundation. It looks impressive, but collapse is inevitable. The silent money-making mindset asks different questions. Asterisk. Is your system repeatable? Can the process work without your constant presence? Asterisk. Is your cash flow defensive? Do you have reserves? Or are you gambling on tomorrow's sales? Asterisk. Is quality scalable? Can you keep your word even when orders triple? Why it matters. Growth feels exciting. It feeds the ego, impresses friends, and makes headlines. But it also magnifies mistakes. A tiny flaw at a small scale becomes a fatal weakness at a larger one. The Jewish way is slower but wiser. Don't expand for applause. Expand only when your model tested, measured, and trusted can carry the weight. David grew out of emotion, chasing the thrill of virality. Sarah grew out of discipline, replicating only what worked. One burned out, the other built longevity. And that's why, in Jewish wisdom, growth is never about feeling ready. It is about proving ready. Secret Suv. Always keep a hidden skill. In Newark, New Jersey, Mr. Cohen was known as a chef. He owned a cozy Mediterranean restaurant where families gathered for Shabbat dinners and couples celebrated anniversaries. His hummus was legendary, his roasted lamb unforgettable. Business was good. But Cohen had a strange hobby. In the evenings, after the kitchen closed and the lights dimmed, he would retreat to his garage. There, surrounded by wood shavings and old tools inherited from his father, he carved toys, small trains, spinning tops, miniature animals. He never sold them. He made them for his grandchildren, for his own joy. Then came the pandemic. Restaurants across America shut their doors. Tables sat empty, ovens went cold. Within a month, Cohen's savings dwindled. His staff left. For the first time in decades, he feared losing everything. But in his garage, his carving tools waited. Out of desperation, Cohen began selling his wooden toys online. He listed them on Etsy, promoted them through community groups. To his surprise, orders came pouring in. Parents stuck at home wanted something real for their children, something handmade, something that felt human in a digital storm. What started as a hobby became survival. Within weeks, Cohen was earning enough to keep his family afloat. By the end of the year, he had shipped toys to 22 states. His restaurant remained closed, but his household never went hungry. The lesson. Jewish tradition teaches a principle that sounds simple but profound. Always have a second trade. It doesn't matter if your main business thrives. You must hold a hidden skill, one that may look small, unrelated, or even unnecessary because life is unpredictable. Why? Asterisk markets shift. Restaurants close. Industries collapse. Trends fade. Asterisk crises arrive. Pandemics, recessions, layoffs, none announce themselves in advance. Asterisk pride deceives. Believing one path will last forever blinds you to reality. A hidden skill is not just about income, it's about confidence. It whispers, even if the world shuts down, I am not helpless. Examples in Jewish communities. Asterisk. A jeweler who also repairs watches in his basement. Asterisk. A teacher who writes translations on the side. Asterisk. A shopkeeper who grows vegetables in his backyard. These side skills are rarely glamorous, but in moments of crisis, they become lifelines. Mr. Cohen's toys were never meant to replace his restaurant. Yet, when everything else failed, they became his shield. And when his grandchildren asked him years later how he survived 2020, he smiled and said, I never stopped carving. Final thought. In the Jewish silent wealth mindset, the goal isn't to always be rich. It is to never be powerless. And that power comes not from money in the bank, but from skills in your hands. Secret 8. 3 generations of trust. In Newark, New Jersey, tucked between an auto shop and a dry cleaner, stood a narrow storefront with a peeling wooden sign, Adler Locksmith. It wasn't modern. No flashing open sign, no website, no app. Just a door with bells that jingled when customers entered. Mr. Adler, a man with thick glasses and steady hands, had been running the shop for more than 30 years. He didn't advertise, didn't offer coupons, didn't run promotions, yet his phone rang every day. When someone lost their house key at midnight, they didn't scroll Google reviews. They called Adler. When a family moved into a new home, the first thing they did was bring their locks to him. And when businesses downtown needed master keys, they trusted him without hesitation. Why? Because Adler had built something far more valuable than a brand. He had built trust, the story of generations. One winter evening, a young man came into the shop. He introduced himself as Daniel. You don't know me, he said, but you changed the locks for my grandparents' house in the 1,980 seconds. You helped my parents when they bought their home in the 1,990 seconds. Now it's my turn. Adler chuckled softly. He did remember the address. He had driven there decades earlier in a rusty van, fixing locks during a snowstorm. The grandparents had paid him in cash and hot soup. Now, nearly 40 years later, their grandson was standing in front of him, ready to hand over his new house keys. 3 generations, 1 family, 1 locksmith. Adler didn't need billboards. He didn't need social media influencers. He had something far stronger. The kind of reputation that parents whisper to children and children carry into adulthood. The lesson. Jewish merchants often repeat, a word of trust feeds 3 lifetimes. Marketing fades. Algorithms change. Discounts attract strangers but rarely loyalty. What endures is credibility, doing what you promised, even when it costs you. Building generational trust requires asterisk, consistency. Show up when you say you will. Deliver what you promise. Asterisk, integrity. Never cut corners even when no one is watching. Asterisk, memory. Treat each customer as if they will return because their children might. Why it matters. In an age of constant competition, many businesses burn out trying to win quick attention, but trust compounds. One satisfied family can generate customers for decades. Adler never bragged about his revenue. He never boasted about his skills, but he was known in every corner of Newark as the locksmith who never failed you. That title, earned in silence, became more valuable than any advertisement. Final thought. 3 generations walked through Adler's door not because of marketing campaigns, but because of memory. That is the essence of the Jewish silent wealth mindset. Credibility outlives noise. Secret 9. Confidentiality is wealth. In the heart of Manhattan's Diamond District, the sidewalks glittered with jewelry shops lined up one after another. Tourists pressed their faces against glass windows, dazzled by necklaces and rings. Street hawkers shouted deals in every language: Russian, Spanish, Hebrew, English. It looked noisy, chaotic, almost theatrical. But inside the small, dimly lit offices above those shops, another world operated, silent, discreet, almost invisible. Deals worth millions were made not with contracts typed in triplicate, but with handshakes and whispers. Here, reputation mattered more than signatures, and silence was worth more than diamonds. Mr. Bernstein was one of those dealers. He dressed simply dark suit, plain tie, no flashy watch. Every day he sat behind a cluttered desk, inspecting stones under a loupe. Buyers and sellers came in and out, but if you asked him where his diamonds came from, he would only smile. If you pressed further, his response was always the same. A man who tells you everything has nothing worth protecting. He never revealed his suppliers. He never bragged about his margins. He didn't discuss which clients owed him, nor which competitors were struggling. His greatest product was not the stones he sold, but the confidentiality he guarded. One afternoon, a young trader new to the business asked him, "Why don't you show off? You could post pictures of your deals online. You'd look more successful." Bernstein leaned forward and said quietly, "Son, diamonds are not the only thing thieves steal. They steal information. If you tell the world who your supplier is, tomorrow he becomes their supplier. If you show the world your profit, tomorrow they undercut you. In this business, silence is the only insurance." The lesson. Jewish business tradition values discretion. Not because there is something to hide, but because blessings are fragile. Oversharing invites envy. Revealing too much creates imitators. Confidentiality as wealth means protecting your source's supplier, client, strategy, guarding your margins, never boast about profit, never disclose your leverage. Asterisk, valuing privacy over applause. The fewer people know, the longer you last. Why it matters. In modern culture, everyone is encouraged to share everything. Entrepreneurs post revenue screenshots, influencers brag about contacts, employees leak company strategies. It feels exciting in the moment. But every word shared is a weapon given to someone else. Bernstein thrived for decades because he practiced the opposite. He shared only with those who needed to know. His silence protected his business, his family, and his future. Final thought. Confidentiality is not paranoia, it is discipline. It is the quiet armor around fragile opportunity. And so, in the Jewish silent money-making mindset, wealth is not just what you own. It is also what you protect from the eyes of others. Secret 10. Think like a dragon, not a straight line. In Phoenix, Arizona, during the mid-2000s housing boom, it seemed like everyone was rushing to buy property. Realtors hosted champagne open houses. Contractors couldn't keep up with demand. Young couples borrowed money they didn't have, convinced that housing prices would only go up. Amid the frenzy was Mr. Gold, a quiet real estate investor in his 50s. He had owned several properties in the area for decades. While neighbors bragged about flipping houses for instant profit, Gold did something strange. He began selling his homes. His friends laughed at him. "Why would you sell now? Prices are skyrocketing. You're leaving money on the table." Gold only smiled. He knew the market didn't move in a straight line. He saw the curve, the bend, the coming storm. So he sold quietly, pocketed his gains, and waited. 2 years later, the crash came. Housing prices collapsed. Banks repossessed homes. Families who had once bragged about their forever houses were now drowning in debt. And Mr. Gold? He began buying again. The very houses he had sold for $500,000 were now selling for $180,000. He bought them back, sometimes the exact same properties, at a fraction of the price. The lesson. In Jewish folklore, dragons are creatures that twist and coil through the clouds. They never fly in straight lines. They wait, they curve, they strike only when the wind favors them. The Jewish silent wealth mindset borrows this image. Markets are not straight arrows, they are cycles, bends, and storms. Those who rush with the crowd, chasing the straight path of greed, get burned. Those who move like dragons, patient, flexible, strategic, outlast everyone. To think like a dragon means asterisk. Move opposite the crowd. Sell when others are buying in frenzy. Buy when others are too afraid to act. Asterisk. Bend with the wind. Adjust when conditions change. Don't be rigid in strategy. Asterisk. Strike only when necessary. Don't chase every deal. Wait for the opportunity that bends in your favor. Why it matters. Most people want simple lines, upward graphs, linear growth, predictable paths. But wealth doesn't grow that way. It spirals. It curves. It requires patience to step aside when others stampede, and courage to step forward when others retreat. Mr. Gold became wealthier not because he had the most houses, but because he understood the shape of the game. He moved like a dragon, not like the crowd. Final thought. Straight lines break in storms. Curves survive. In business, as in life, thinking like a dragon, quiet, patient, bending with the wind is the difference between those who fall with the crowd and those who build fortunes in silence. Secret 11. Defense before offense. In Boston, Massachusetts, there was a bakery on a quiet neighborhood street. The owner, Ben Weiss, wasn't the type to chase headlines. His pastries weren't featured on food blogs, and he never entered competitions. But every morning at 5 a.m., he rolled dough, baked bread, and opened his shop on time. Customers loved his croissants, but if you looked at his prices, they were modest. He wasn't getting rich fast. In fact, competitors laughed at him. "Ben, you're undercharging. Raise your prices, open a second shop franchise. You'll never scale like this." But what they didn't see was how Ben managed his money. Every week, after paying his staff and expenses, he set aside a small envelope of cash. Some went into a savings account. Some went into gold coins he kept in a safe. He didn't gamble in risky stocks. He didn't chase the next big tech investment. He built his defenses quietly. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, many restaurants and bakeries in Boston shut their doors. Rent was too high. Loans came due. Credit dried up. People panicked. But Ben's bakery stayed open. He had savings to cover months of expenses. His staff kept their jobs. His community kept their bread. A customer once asked him, "How did you survive when everyone else closed?" Ben simply replied, "I play defense before offense. If you can survive the bad years, the good years will take care of themselves." The lesson. In Jewish money wisdom, defense always comes before offense. It's not how much you make in good times, it's how long you last in bad times. Defensive wealth building looks boring to outsiders. Asterisk. Saving small amounts consistently. Asterisk. Buying tangible stores of value like gold or land. Asterisk. Avoiding debt traps, even when everyone else is borrowing. Asterisk. Preparing for dry seasons, not just celebrating harvest. But this boring approach is the reason Jewish families across generations often outlast crises that wipe others out. They value survivability more than speed. Why it matters. In modern culture, people chase aggressive offense viral businesses, risky investments, get-rich-quick plays. But offense without defense is fragile. It collapses at the first downturn. Defense is not weakness. Defense is endurance. And endurance is what turns small shops into multi-generational legacies. Final thought. Ben never became the richest baker in Boston. But when storms came, his oven stayed hot, his lights stayed on, and his family slept without fear. In the Jewish silent wealth mindset, the strongest offense is not how fast you can rise, but how well you are prepared not to fall. Secret tool. Honor above all. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Mr. Stein owned a modest furniture store. It wasn't part of a chain, and it didn't have flashy commercials on TV. Just a family-run shop with solid oak tables, couches built to last, and a reputation for treating customers fairly. One Saturday afternoon, a young couple came in. They had just bought their first home and spent nearly all their savings on a dining set from Stein's store. A week later, when the delivery truck arrived, the couple was shocked. The wrong table and mismatched chairs had been delivered. Frustrated, they called the store, expecting a battle. But Stein didn't argue. He didn't blame his staff. He didn't hide behind policies. Instead, he personally drove to their home that same evening, apologized face-to-face, and promised to fix it immediately. Within 48 hours, the correct set was delivered along with a complimentary armchair. The couple was stunned. They told their friends, who later bought furniture from Stein. Years later, when their children grew up, they too returned to his store. One mistake, handled with honor, had created decades of loyalty. Stein often told his employees, "We don't just sell wood and fabric. We sell trust, and trust is built on honor." The lesson: money lost can be earned again, but honor lost is gone forever. In Jewish business culture, this truth is central. Wealth without honor is fragile. You may make a profit today by cutting corners, lying, or hiding behind excuses, but the long-term cost, the erosion of trust, will destroy everything. Honor above all means admitting mistakes quickly. Don't delay, don't hide, don't blame, making it right, even at a cost. A short-term loss often becomes a long-term investment in reputation. Understanding that customers remember respect more than discounts. Why it matters. In a noisy, competitive marketplace, many businesses chase margins and forget integrity. But people never forget how you made them feel. A single act of honor can echo for generations. Stein's competitors tried to undercut him with flashy sales. Many of them eventually closed. But his store endured not because his prices were the lowest, but because his honor was priceless. Final thought. Honor is not just morality. It is strategy. It is the foundation of trust, and trust is the foundation of generational wealth. In the Jewish silent wealth mindset, honor stands higher than profit. Because while money may come and go, honor once lost never returns.